Hello, and welcome to the 8th TOOTL game devlog. We have a new member. His name is Normal Canard, and he is a Frenchman. He helped create this document. In fact, he created this document in French, and I helped translate it. It's the written rules for the final puzzle mechanic that will be added to the TOOTL game. It's actually something I originally wanted to be in the game when I started it all those years ago, but I never really got around to programming it. That is, until now. I've been programming this game for the last 3 years. I've learned a lot since, and sadly, I think I'm going to have to cut a lot of the fantastic ideas we had. Otherwise, this project will never be completed. The game is planned to be done in 41 days, for June 22nd. To do this project will be focused on this final puzzle mechanic. A few of the game mechanics will be ported from the older version of the game, but we'll see what makes it and what doesn't. I'd rather a small complete game over a large incomplete game, and I do believe the same is true with you. Before we get started, a little bit of a spoiler alert. The surprise of the game might be spoiled if you know all of the mechanics. If you wish to keep that a surprise, you don't have to keep watching. If you feel like participating in the creation of the game, feel free to check out the link in the description and follow this, or if you're just curious on how the game works, you can continue. Now then, let's get to the rules. So we have these rooms that are formed by 7 by 7 pixels in our blueprints over here. Each one of these rooms would be complete rooms in the final game, but for now are represented as tiles. Each tile represents a room where the borders delimit the field of vision of the camera. That is to say that at any given point you can only really see one room at a time. So we have different rooms here. Each tile can have different characteristics based on what's inside of them. They can be a room, an empty, have a wall, or not. They can include items such as this blue rotator, red starting point, green ending point. It can have this gray mover, and also these tiles here that represent if a tile is Y movable, X movable, or both movable, along with these elevator tiles as well. And each one of these different mechanics can be smushed into one single room, and you can mix and match anything you want as the level designer. The tiles can be freely assembled in an array. The level can be of any size / aspect ratio. This isn't entirely true, but basically I take the longest side and form a square out of it by filling in all the remaining tiles with empties. This piece is one that a player can navigate. This one is a void of which the player cannot enter. It is an empty tile. The player can only move horizontally room to room. Here's an animation that explains what happens when you walk into the void. So as you walk into an empty tile, you loop around and make it to the rightmost available open room. You can think as these inner areas as the room itself, and these little portions here as hallways that connect the rooms together. It is therefore possible to have a room with a closed hallway. The closed side will have the same characteristics as a void tile. It is therefore mandatory to have a minimum of 1 hallway per tile to be considered a room. If we go back to our previous example, here is the result. With this knowledge, we can have some fun by doing some experiments. What would happen if the player in the left room moves to the right? We can observe the player will loop back into their current tile as if there was a wall. You can imagine it as just a wall that limits the player so that they cannot proceed. Look at this picture here. The goal of the player is to be in the same room as the green square here, and they start in the room with the red. If closed hallways have the same characteristics as an empty tile, the solution would be to move one tile to the left, as moving right would only make you loop within your same tile forever. So going to the left allows you to make it here. Interestingly enough, if you are here, you are stuck. You can't go left, you have to go right to make it back. The player loops directly to the end without passing through the middle. And so that's the basics of rooms and empties. Next up we have elevators. Elevators are part of a tile that can be added to any room in which the player can navigate. That is to say, not an empty. Here's a room tile with a magenta lift. This piece is the only one that allows the player to move vertically directly. Elevators that are vertically aligned and have the same colors are connected. So if the character takes the blue, if our character were to take blue elevator number 1, he can go up to any floor that has a blue elevator that is aligned vertically with blue elevator number 1. Here are 2 examples side by side. So we have the character going from one lift to another one as long as they are aligned vertically and have the same color. Different elevators of the same color do not necessarily have to be vertically aligned to be part of the same network. That is to say, they can be the same color but not be aligned. They just won't be connected. This will be explained more in the paragraph on rotators. If the player is using an elevator in a direction where there is no elevator, he will loop around. So if you are on the top floor and you go up, you'll arrive at the bottommost floor. And if you're at the bottommost floor and you go down, you'll arrive at the topmost floor. This mechanic is most useful in networks with more than 2 elevators. Because if there's only 2 elevators, no matter which direction you go, you pretty much arrive at the same spot. Rotators. The rotator allows you to rotate the map by 90 degrees. The position of the tiles are rotated, but not the tiles themselves. The top of a tile always remains the top, and the floor always remains the floor. Here is a picture of the rotator, the blue thing, the blue seat. So here's an animation. Objects with which the player interacts become purple. So here you can see the player interacts with a rotator, the map rotates, he goes into the yellow elevator tile, and then he can go up. While originally it would have been impossible for him to go anywhere if he does not rotate the rooms first. And this is also going back on the example of how we can have 2 elevators that are horizontally aligned, but they aren't connected because you can't take an elevator horizontally. So by rotating the map, these elevators then managed to get aligned. Next up we have movers. That's this little rectangle over here. So this is a cyan mover. By interacting with a mover, you may move tiles that are movable and have the same color. So for instance, interacting with this cyan mover will allow you to move either this horizontally movable room horizontally or this vertically movable room vertically. Here's an animation that shows a bit of what happens, though the animation kind of suggests that you can put it in between 2 rooms. This is not true. The room may only be moved to an empty location, so this animation will have to be redone, sadly. Before moving, the player needs to select which tile he wants to move and where he wants to move it. Movable rooms can only be placed in empty slots. And finally, we have the start and the end tiles, which the red one is the start tile and this green one is the end tile. So this looks like a lot of different mechanics, and how, making these rooms might be complicated to program or create or, design. We have a bit of a design language over here, but how long will this take to actually put into the game? Well, the answer is not very long at all. You see, I made it possible for you to simply draw out the map, and the map will be loaded automatically. So for instance, we have a basic little puzzle over here. You start in the red and you need to make it to the green. The idea would be that you'd take the elevator here, use the mover to move this room over here, take the elevator up, go over here, take the elevator down, and you would make it to where you need to be. And now any level designer can just draw out a map and test it, because I've made a little bit of a prototype over here. Right now, the prototype executable file will load a level.png file. That's the level that we saw over here. And it will generate some basic graphics using the same tile set rules. So let's see how that looks. So over here, we have the tiles. We start at the red block. We are this purple square, and all the rules apply. So I made it so that you can move around using the arrow keys going right or left. And over here, let's say here's an example. If I were to move left into this void, into this empty tile, I should loop back around here. and I do. If you want to use the elevators, you can use the up and down arrows, as well as W, A, S, and D. W and S to go up and down elevators, left and right, A and D. If you can't, nothing happens. N, you can interact with the mover by pressing M for now. This is all in the prototype, it's just to get the test along. In the final game, you will be able to interact by clicking on different items that will actually exist in real sized rooms. So if I hit M, you can see that the tile starts pulsating. This means that I'm now in tile select mode. You can see that the player stays in his tile while I can use the arrow keys or WASD to move around. I can select, I can't select any of these tiles by pressing enter because they're not movable, but this one is. So if I hit enter, it then moves in a different speed to tell me that it's selected. I can't move it horizontally, but I can move it vertically. So I've moved it down. I hit M to get out of mover mode, and you can see now I can go up and down this elevator, but I can't move anywhere. I can't go left or right because I'm blocked either by a wall or by the void that just makes me loop back to where I am. So if I select this room and place it up here, it will allow me to take the elevator up, move across the room, take this elevator down, and make it to the green room. Some other things I've added to the prototype is a grid view, separating so you can see a little more clearly how things are aligned as you test your levels. And also a single view, so I'm moving around, but I only get to see one tile at a time. This is a little confusing because you don't really know if you're walking around in a circle, but ideally this is actually how the game is going to be played in the final version, except the tiles are going to have a lot more detail, so you'll be able to identify it by the details. And I made it possible to zoom in and out as well. All of the controls will be in a README file of this, as well as the prototype itself. You can download. I'll put a link in the description. I also have another level I did, this one that I made for testing purposes. So if I call this that. So you have to annoyingly name your level level.png to test it, but that's just, because it's just a prototype. I want to add this into the actual Televoid game as quickly as possible. But if I load in my test level over here, you can see I started the red, got to go to the green. This level is pretty easy. But if you go to the right here, you loop back, you can see, because there's a wall and it acts a bit like a void tile. So you loop to the, if you're going right, you loop to the leftmost tile. And if you go left, you warp to the rightmost tile. So over here, if you go right, you always loop in these 4 tiles. But if you go left, you manage to make it to the other side and you can solve the puzzle. But since there's a wall here, it'll actually make you loop back into the same room. That's what walls do. These, there's 2 movers over here, a magenta one and a orange one. And if you interact with the magenta one, you can't interact with orange movers, only magenta movers. And this room is Y movable by magenta and orange movable by orange. So I can select this tile, but I can't place it horizontally. I can only place it vertically. And since I'm in this room, I do move with the tile. So I can place myself over here. I can't go right because I'll loop back into the same tile, but I can go left and loop over here. But now I can't go up because I'm stuck. But there's a rotator here. If I rotate, I can go up, but now I can't move anywhere else. But I could take the elevator down, go left, and rotate a few times. And now I've managed to go back up and move the magenta mover. So you see how over here we have a green elevator and a blue elevator, but I can't go down because they're two different colors, but by rotating, things align differently. Here's another interesting example. Over here, this tile over here is only horizontally movable by the cyan mover. So I can only move it on this one axis. This one axis. But if I wanted to move it up or down, something I could do is rotate 90 degrees. Take the elevator down to the mover, select the mover, and now I can respect the rule of moving it horizontally, but by rotating the scene back to its original rotation, you can see I've moved it now a tile down relative to this rotation. So you can already start to visualize the complicated puzzles that can be created by this, especially if you imagine a limited perspective. Of course, the player will be given hints and such to complete the puzzle, as well as when you're interacting with the mover, perhaps being given a minimal view of the grid layout of different levels. We'll have to wait and see how the final puzzle will be added, but the loader works, and it's going to be this exact loader that's going to be used in the final game. We're just going to change the graphics and gameplay. So, I hope you enjoyed this devlog. It's more of me just saying where we're at. If you're interested in joining the project, there's some information in the description. If you want to try out this prototype, there's a download link. It's a Mediafire. And I'll try to make more videos. I know I keep saying that, but I'll try to make some more videos if you're interested. I hope this was interesting, and I can't wait for what's going to happen in 42 days. All right, have a good day or night.